Hello and welcome back to another video. It has been a while since I've uploaded a video here on YouTube, and it's been a while since I've done one of these as well. So this video, basically a few of the students from my course, they've given me some photos that I'm going to critique, and there's just a few important things to remember while we're going through this. Number one is that everyone who submitted images to me for this video, they're all at different parts of their photography journey. So some might be very beginners and some might have been doing photography for a few years. The second thing is that I don't have any raw files. These are just probably low-res JPEG, so I may not be seeing what they actually look like, and like if they were printed or something like that, and I won't be able to edit them too much. But thirdly, photography is an art, and art is very subjective. So I'm going to explain what I would do to these images, or what I like about these images or don't like, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means that it's basically my style. It's what I think of them. So everyone's different, everyone's going to have a different opinion, and that's totally fine. And the other thing I just want to say is that I won't be judging these too harshly. That's not the point of this video. I'm not going to make fun of things just for the sake of content. It's going to be constructive criticism, and again, what I think I would do to the images, or what I think about them, totally in my opinion. So I've got about 15 images to get through, so let's get started on the very first one here. I'm going to be reading a bit off my phone here. In the previous videos, I had my laptop in front of me, or I was using my phone. But what I've done this time, I've loaded them up in Lightroom so I can actually show you if I would edit it a certain way, or do something a certain way. But on my phone, I have the descriptions of the images and who submitted them. So first of all, thank you very much also for everyone who submitted an image here. It's much appreciated. And I'm happy to provide the feedback, which I'm about to do. So first one here is from Ivan. I'll just open my screen right now. You'll be able to see Lightroom. This is Ivan's image here, and this is his explanation of the image. The image was taken near one of the nature walks between Fettercan and Edzell, Aberdeenshire, Scotland. Sorry, that was bad. Having heard so much about the area, which is called the Blue Door of Edzell, I just had to go and visit it, as it has vast photography opportunities for landscapes. Sadly, no camera settings. That's all good. So yeah, I really like this image. The only thing I can see that straight away I'd change, and this is just, I'm a real stickler for architecture being like straight or horizontal. Now, it's not always the case, it just depends on the image, but I think this one would look better if the bridge was a little more straight. It seems like the horizon, even though you can't see it in the image, it seems like the horizon is off a little bit. It looks like things are falling down to the right a little bit. So it's a great image, don't get me wrong, but what I might do is just adjust the angle and the crop till the bridge is somewhat level. Maybe somewhere there. And in my opinion, I think that looks a bit better. The eye flows a little bit more, for some reason, more naturally through this water here and up under the bridge there. The other thing is, I think it's slightly over edited. I can see there's highlights here. I don't know if this is going to tell me on here, but where are we? Yeah, it's only a JPEG, so it's hard to tell, but it does look like there's things that are potentially blown out or have been pushed a little bit too far when it comes to editing. Now, again, please keep in mind, I am working with low-res JPEG, so the original could look absolutely fantastic. Just in my opinion, it's a little bit too dark, and there's some things that are a little bit overexposed in other areas. So if this was my image, the way I would edit it, and remember, again, this is totally my opinion. You may think what I'm doing looks terrible, but I'd just probably lift the exposure slightly, or maybe just drop the highlights and lift the shadows instead. Something like that. Maybe add a vignette, and now you can see this beautiful kind of sunrise or sunset colors in the sky there coming through. Whereas if I reset this, which I'll do in a minute, you will see that you can't really see any of that. Especially if you're going to print this, you do want to make it a bit brighter for print. But nonetheless, what Ivan had done was perfect, as in it had a nice moody feel to it. I'd probably play around with some brushes here and brush some things in a bit darker, etc. But it's a fantastic image nonetheless. As I said, I have a background in real estate and architectural photography. I did that many years ago. So I love seeing when architecture and things like that are level and straight. It totally depends on the image though, but I think this one does look better the way I've cropped it here. Let's look at a before and after view. Oops, wrong one. Okay, it seems like, yeah, it's the same crop, because obviously when you crop things, the before and after is the same. But what I'll do, go back to the main image and just give it a reset. And that's how it looked before. So I'll undo that. That's with my quick edit, and that's the reset. Nonetheless, fantastic image. I absolutely like this. I absolutely love this one. Great work, Ivan. Just like I said, maybe a tad over edited, maybe a little bit saturated in some places, but again, I am working with a low res JPEG. Let's go to the next one here. This is the second image in the set, and this is from Just make sure, because I've asked if they want to remain anonymous, so I'll make sure I won't say their name if they do. No, all good. This one's from Johnny, and the description here is Sony a6400, so that's the camera that it was shot on, in manual mode handheld. The settings are f7.1, 1/100th of a second on the shutter speed, 63mm at ISO 125. So I absolutely love this image. It's a weird aspect ratio, so I'm not sure if it's a crop or if it's a vertical panorama, but either way, I really like it. The only thing that I really do to this image is perhaps brighten it up a little bit. I do like the mood, I like the way it looks, but I would also like to see a bit more texture in the wood, the timber, and all that type of thing. But again, I got to keep repeating this. I'm not going to say it for the rest of the video, but it's my opinion. It's what I think looks good. If these were my photos, this is how I'd edit them. So it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them. It just means this is how I would do it. Basically, I'd probably just lift the shadows and maybe the overall exposure just a little bit. Maybe something like that, and then I may add a linear gradient up from the bottom. My computer's running like a bit bad because I've got a lot of things going on with it at the moment. Yeah, I just lower the exposure of the foreground there just to draw the eye away from those plants in the foreground. I like them, I think they look good, so I wouldn't crop them out, but I don't want the eye to be drawn to the bottom of the image. We want to try and bring the eye up into the middle, or the subject of the image, which you've done a great job here, because the brightest part of the image is this like opening in the end of this bridge or whatever this is. I assume it's like a trestle bridge or something. And then I may add another one of those linear gradients again from the top. Something like that. Now, I love the image before, but if you're going to print this, you may want to brighten it a little bit more, but we'll just do it before and after. All I've done is really brighten it. I think the original, like I said, was really nice, just a little bit too dark for my tastes, but that's just me. Let's move on to the next one here. Alright, so this next one here is from Paul, and his explanation of the photo is taken at Middleton Point Beach in South Australia, a popular surfing beach on the south coast. It provides the perfect spot for long exposure sunrises. Using my Nikon D5600, I took around 20 photos using a shutter speed of 1/500th of a second, f6.7, ISO 200 at 18mm. I then edited one of those in Lightroom, copied the settings to the rest, and exported to Photoshop, where I stacked them following your long exposure without an ND filter lesson. Appreciate any tips and feedback. Cheers, Paul. So Paul's done something that I teach in my course, which is how to shoot a long exposure without having an ND filter during the day, obviously. I often do this because sometimes I can't be bothered getting my ND filter out. I'm just walking around with my camera. I might not even have it with me. The advantages of doing this, I am going to do a YouTube video actually on this method and how to do it. The advantages are you don't need an ND filter, so obviously that's a pretty good advantage. The second advantage is you can shoot things handheld, because you're taking a burst, like a number of photos in burst mode or one after the other. You don't need to have your camera on a tripod sitting there for 2, 3, 5, 10 seconds, whatever it is, so you can shoot these handheld. The only downside to doing this method is that you don't know what it looks like until you've edited it in Photoshop, so it may not come out the way you like, but I always just take more images than I need, and then I can choose whether I want to use less or more of those images in the final edit. So Paul has done a great job here of pulling off that method. It looks really, really nice. I don't know what the water looked like at the time, but usually if the water is really, really rough, I find you need a shorter shutter speed, like not as long, maybe 1/5 or something is often enough. And if the water is slow moving, then I go with the longer shutter speed. It just depends. I'm not a huge fan myself, even though some of my images have it, it's just because it's the way they came out. I'm not a big fan of the frothy look in the water, like it almost looks like steam or smoke. It sometimes looks good, mainly with waterfalls and things like that, but for some people, they might find it hard to know what they're looking at. So in this case, Paul, what you could probably do, let's say you shot 20 images, I think that's what you said. You could maybe only use 5 of those, or just experiment and see what leaves a little bit of texture in the water, but still gives you that movement, that idea of movement. Either way, I do love this image. It's just, in my personal opinion, I don't like the frothy kind of water that looks like smoke or steam. That's just, I hate it in my own images, even though I have done it before. I do prefer seeing some detail in the water so people know what it is. Someone who doesn't know what they're looking at might think this is, you know, steam or smoke coming out from a hot spring or something like that. But nonetheless, it's a great image. My only other feedback is the horizon. It is hard to tell, but I think the horizon is a bit off, so we'll just give that a little bit of a straighten. Probably somewhere there. It's very hard to tell because of the waves, but Even that looks a bit off, but maybe somewhere there the horizon is level. It's a really nice edit. I like the composition. I love how there's this kind of bowl of rocks and then you have the water there. And the only thing I do is it feels like there's a lot of green, like a cast over the whole image. So what I would do is potentially just push the tint up towards the purple and maybe cool the image down a little bit. Something like that. I'd play around with it a little bit more, but I think that's a little bit more natural. Let's look at the before and after. It's going to be very subtle. I didn't do much to it. But you can see the sky in my image looks a little bit more probably the right color, and the rocks as well. The color cast I imagine is probably just off the rocks and the water, things like that. But nonetheless, it is a really nice image. Yeah, very well done. And that method, I love it. I love doing that because I can't always be bothered getting my ND filter out. Usually when I do a shoot, I go somewhere and I try and find like a hero shot of the day, something I really want. But then when you're walking there or back, you may not have all your equipment out. So I do this method if there's an image that I think it might be a keeper, it might not be a keeper. But yeah, this method works very, very well for not having an ND filter, or not using an ND filter anyway. So let's go to the next image here. This person has chosen to remain anonymous, which is totally cool. The explanation of this photo is Canon EOS R50 with the RF 100 to 400mm f5.6 IS USM lens, shutter speed of 1/160th, aperture of f6.3 and ISO 6400. These modern cameras at higher ISO is absolutely fantastic. This at 6400 looks very clean. Yeah, I love this image. I think the composition's good. Me personally, I might have tried to get the bird. I'll crop it to show you more in the center of the image. Maybe, I don't know, something like that. But again, I was going to say I really like how the branch comes from the bottom right to the top left. It's almost like a leading line into the bird. But I still like your composition regardless, so I'm going to undo that. But the one thing I'd like to do here, wildlife photography is very hard. I not guarantee you, but I reckon this bird flew off about a second or two after this shot was taken. That's what makes wildlife photography so hard. So it is hard to get perfect compositions and backgrounds that aren't distracting. So the only thing I find here is the background is slightly distracting and the bird maybe doesn't stand out enough. So what I'll do in this scenario is grab my masking tools and select the subject, which hopefully Lightroom does a decent job of selecting the bird, which it has. It's missed a bit of the tail feathers here, but for the sake of what I'm doing now, I'm just trying to get through this quickly. I'm going to lift the exposure of the bird and the shadows. Something like that. Yeah, something like that. Increase the saturation just a tad as well. And then what I'm going to do is click in these three dots here. I'm going to duplicate and invert the mask. And what that will do, it'll give me the same mask as the bird, but invert it. So it's going to be selecting everything but the bird now. So what we can do is lower the exposure of the background just a little bit. And I might even remove some texture as well. And we could also remove some saturation as well. And let me just select the bird again. I wouldn't mind making him or her a little bit brighter again. Something like that. So let's just look at it before and after. There you go. Like in my image, as I said, the original image was absolutely beautiful. You've done a fantastic job. I just think the bird stands out a little bit more in my image, and the background, the distracting background, although it is a nice background, I've kind of subdued that a little bit. That's the hard thing about wildlife photography. The perfect photo is usually when, you know, a bird's sitting somewhere and there's like nothing in the background, or it's just so far away that it's just blown to smithereens in terms of blur. But when things are a bit closer in the background, it is a little bit distracting. I think, yeah, f6.3 is what it said you shot it at. Which is probably a pretty good aperture, because at 400mm when you actually know this, I don't know if that's the right settings, because she did say it was 400mm. Oh no, she didn't specify. He or she didn't specify the focal length, I don't think. Everything else looks correct. So yeah, I think maybe it was that focal length. When you are zooming in different focal lengths, your depth of field, let's just say you shot this at f2.8, the more zoomed in you are, the more shallow the depth of field looks. So you do have to be careful of that. One thing that they've done a great job of here is, well, zoomed in a bit too far, but it's getting the whole bird in focus. It's really nice and sharp, and it only drops focus right after the bird, which is absolutely perfect. But yeah, that's what I'll do to that one. Nonetheless, a fantastic image, absolutely beautiful bird. I don't know what kind of bird that is, but it's beautiful. Love the colors here. That's one thing I should mention. Your editing, the colors are really nice, really beautiful. Let's move on to the next one. So this next one here is from Mike. I see a lot of images from Mike in the group. all fantastic. So this is his explanation of the photo. This shot was one taken from my first real test of a new lens that I've just purchased, especially for motorsport. Canon 5D Mark IV, Canon EF 100 to 400 f4.5 to 5.6 lens, focal length of 400mm, aperture was f10, shutter speed of 1/800th of a second, and ISO 500. And he's written here, just goes to show that although my gear is technically high quality, it was all purchased secondhand and is far from cutting edge. Latest, all singing and dancing mirrorless camera technology. That's exactly right. People have been shooting amazing photos for years without all this technology. And like I say in my landscape course, don't get obsessed with equipment, because I have expensive equipment, but it's when you know how to use it, you can take advantage of that extra that equipment. But if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to, you know, composition, lighting, editing, all that type of thing, doesn't matter what camera you use, your photos aren't going to be the greatest. And an example of that is a video I did with a friend of mine right here on my YouTube channel, which I'll link or put in one of these corners here. We actually went out and shot a little bit of a competition where he could use all of my gear, which was thousands of dollars worth of gear. And he's a beginner, beginner photographer, and I had to use a Canon kit a Canon kit lens and a cheap 1500D, and I won both of those rounds just purely because my compositions were better, my editing was better. So that's what it comes down to. Anyway, Mike, absolutely fantastic image. I love this. I know how hard motorsport is, especially motorcycles. They're extremely fast. The one thing I'd do to this image that I did to the last image is a very, very similar thing, would be to mask the subject and maybe bring the exposure up of the bike and the rider just a little bit, and then do the same thing where I duplicate and invert the mask and just lower the exposure of the background. It just looks a bit more gritty, a bit more contrasty, and the bike pops a lot more. This bike has a whole bunch of beautiful colors on it, and I want to see those. I don't want them to get lost in the background, so I'd probably lower the background exposure a little bit like that, and that's really all. The only other thing I'd suggest, I think you've picked, didn't tell me, let me just check. I can't remember what aperture you said you used. Yeah, f10. That's probably a pretty good aperture because you do have everything in focus that needs to be in focus. The background starts to drift off. I'd love if the background was a little bit blurrier, but there is a risk in doing that. You don't know where the bike's going to be in your frame when, you do, but they're so fast that it all happens in a second. So I think you've done the right thing by closing your aperture down a little bit more, ensuring that the whole bike's in focus, rather than trying to get that really blurry background, which can be difficult with telephoto stuff and things moving this fast. And the other thing is you may have gone with a slower shutter speed to get some motion blur, but it looks like the rider is coming towards you, so that probably wouldn't have been a good idea anyway. It's more so for panning shots. What I might do actually is grab that mask of the background again and lower the texture. This will make it kind of look like it's a bit of a shallower depth of field. And you could lower the sharpness and things like that as well. But you don't want to do it too much because it will start to look really obvious. Maybe somewhere there. Let's look at a before and after of that one. Yeah. Again, totally my opinion. I just think that the bike pops a little more in the edited version because the background's a little bit darker and less distracting. But that's it. Again, my opinion. You may hate that. You may love it. That's the hard thing about photography. It's just purely opinion at the end of the day. All right, this next image here, let me just look up whose this was and what they said about it. This is from Shelley, and this was ISO 100 f8 1/20th of a second shot at 51mm. Now, I'm pretty sure I remember this image being uploaded to we've got a private Facebook group as part of the course. So if you did join the course, you do get to join a private Facebook group where you can share your photos, ask for advice, all that type of thing. I'm always on there answering questions and things like that. And I believe that Shelley put this one up and asked for feedback. Weirdly, the feedback I gave at the time, I don't know if I disagree with it now, because seeing it on a big screen at a higher resolution looks 1,000 times better than it did on Facebook. My feedback at the time was to kind of crop it. I usually don't like seeing, open space and then like a tree and then open space again. I'd prefer to have either open space on the sides of my images or something there, and it's kind of going open, the tree open again. My advice to her was to crop it either here, so that way this arch kind of ends up in the middle of the image, or crop it even further into this tree here. But honestly, yeah, I don't think that looks that good. Whoops. But yeah, looking at it now, as I said, on a larger screen in a higher resolution, I think this looks absolutely fantastic. I love the colors, I love the editing, I love the fact that the trees are slightly silhouetted. They're not completely black, but they're also not fully detailed. You could probably lift the shadows if you did want to do that. Even that looks okay, but I really like what you've done here. I love the composition with the tree arch framing the shot. I think my original feedback was basically that because this branch is framing the shot, I prefer my framing to be closer to the edges of the images. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe if it was somewhere like this, but I don't know. It would have to be a different composition in my opinion. Maybe something like that. But I don't know. I don't think it works here. I think what she has done looks great as it is. So yeah, fantastic work there. I like this one. And yeah, may have gone back on the feedback. That's the thing, my opinion will change all the time as well. Especially when I'm seeing them now in a higher resolution on a bigger screen. Facebook destroys image quality when you do upload photos on there. So yeah, great job on this one. I really love this one. All right, so this next image here is from Tristan, and he has written, "This was a sunrise shot panorama containing 5 shots combined. I shot this with a Nikon D500 and a Nikon 35mm f1.8 lens. Here are my settings. 35mm 1/160th of a second at f8 ISO 100, shot handheld at around 7 AM, edited in Lightroom." I absolutely love this image. I think it's beautiful. My only critique here is that this is again personal preference. I'd probably remove this lens flare here. It's a little bit distracting. I love the sun flares, they're absolutely amazing, but just this spot here where obviously the light's bouncing around the lens inside the glass, and you do get things like this sometimes. We can remove this in Lightroom, although it's something I probably would do in Photoshop because I think it does a better job, but I'll just do it in Lightroom for the sake of this video. I don't want it to go for too long. Right, it hasn't done a perfect job, but it's a bit better. The only other thing, again, it's my opinion, obviously the subject of this image is all this area here with the buildings, the bridge, and the sunset, or sunrise I should say, but I'd lift the shadows up slightly just to bring a bit more of just to make the image a bit more brighter overall, lift the exposure and maybe drop the highlights, something like that. And another thing I would do, often when you are shooting towards the sun, because the sun is warm, not warm in temperature, even though it is, warm in color, your camera, if it's on automatic white balance, which I shoot on 99% of the time, there's definitely nothing wrong with that, but it'll make the rest of the scene kind of blue because it's trying to counteract that really orange or really warm color from the sun. So what I would do here, in my opinion, is just increase the color temperature, maybe somewhere there, and it just makes it look like the whole image is a little bit warmer. It gives me that vibe that I'm there, it's warm, or the sun's coming up, that beautiful golden light is washing over the scene. Maybe even a little bit more, maybe something like that is what I would do. And it looks like you've already done, I think maybe it's just the normal lens vignette, or you've added a vignette, but I would do a linear gradient from the top and the bottom. I'll do that quickly. This video is going to go forever. I'll just do this really quickly. Just to drag the focus away from those things in the very foreground and the sky, and drag the eye into this beautiful structure here, the bridge, all the buildings there. I'm sure that these photos level, it is hard to tell because there's a lot of things going on with this bridge, but the buildings look vertical, which I love. And what else would I do to this image? I think that's really all. The one thing I'd try in this image is something I do sometimes with my landscape images, and that's to make a radial gradient and just drag that somewhere near the sun and give it a bit of an angle. We're just going to make it look like the sun's kind of washing a little bit more over the area. So I'll lift up the color temperature and I'll lower the dehaze and maybe lift the exposure as well, and just move that around a little bit. Yeah, I don't know if I like this or not, but we'll just turn it off and on. It's not bad. I could live with it or without it. I think it looks great either way, but yeah, great job, Tristan. I really like this photo. Let's do a before and after quickly. I love Tristan's photo as it was now that I'm looking at it, to be totally honest, but I do think that the warmth and things like that work a little bit better. I think it was just a little bit too cold in your original image, and as I said, that's because cameras like to make things really blue or really cool them off when there's something really warm in the image like the sun there. But nonetheless, fantastic image. I just would like to have seen a little bit more of the details in the main subject here, but each to their own. Fantastic image either way. All right, this next image here is from Vincent, and it says Panorama Seascape Rye Back Beach. I don't live near Rye, but I'm close enough, so I didn't know Vincent was kind of around my area. I live about an hour from Rye. An hour? Yeah, about an hour roughly. So yeah, that's cool. There's a few people doing the course. I didn't realize that they're putting up photos. I'm like, oh, I know where that is. That's like not near my house, but it's, you know, within an hour or two from my house. So it's pretty crazy because people from all over the world do my course. It's not just Australians. Anyway, Vincent, beautiful image. I absolutely love this. There's not really much I would critique on this. I like it. It's not the most exhilarating landscape in terms of there's not really a main subject or anything like that, but nonetheless, the settings, the colors, all that kind of thing looks really nice. The composition's nice. I just don't know if there's, I don't know exactly where this is, but I don't know if there's just a little bit more of an interesting composition somewhere else where maybe there's something a bit more, maybe there's more interesting subject. But nonetheless, like, this is a really nice image. As I said, I love the colors. It looks like you have done a linear gradient down from the top, unless again that's just lens vignetting or something like that. But yeah, it looks really, really nice. One thing I'll just say quickly, I mean, it's probably on half my photos too. You can see these spots here. That's probably just dust on your lens, right? Whether it's the front element, the rear element, or even your camera sensor. So just be careful of those. You can easily clone them out in Photoshop or Lightroom anyway. But yeah, just make sure your lenses and stuff are clean. But other than that, I think this is a really, really nice image. This is something subtle I'd love to have printed and kind of maybe just somewhere in my house. I think it's just a really nice understated image. Some things, as I said before, like it would be nice seeing a nicer subject here or something, but we don't always need that. And in this image, I think this works. I don't know if a long exposure would look nice here. Just maybe, like, I can't remember what the shutter speed was on this. Did Vincent tell us? I think he did. No, he didn't. Maybe like 1/5. It depends how fast the waves were. Just a slightly slow shutter speed to get a bit of movement in the water. I think that would look great here. But nonetheless, it's a beautiful image. So yeah, well done, Vincent. It's a good one. All right, so this next image here is from Julie. Her explanation of the photo is it's Canon EOS Rebel T6, f-stop 5.6, ISO 200, shutter 1/125th of a second, and the lens is the 18 to 55mm kit lens at 55mm. In my backyard, it should crop to rule of thirds, but it's art and I like how it looks. Exactly right. That's what I'm saying. No matter what I say here, you don't have to agree with me. It doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't mean I'm wrong. It's purely subjective. So the only time I think that like there are rules is when it comes to certain genres of photography, like real estate and architecture. You know, you don't want the walls bending and moving in. And when it comes to landscape, I also like to say I think it is a good rule to keep your horizons level. But other than that, rule of thirds, all that type of thing, it's just something you should know, but you can break the rules at any time because it doesn't always make a great photo when you do follow the rules. Anyway, I really love this one. I love the colors. What I like most about this is the depth of field. You've chosen an aperture where everything that needs to be in focus is in focus, and then it slowly drifts off out of focus as it gets into the background. It's obviously a lower res image, so it's blurry-ish, but you can see these are all in focus all the way back behind these petals, and behind the flower starts to drift out of focus. I love this. Rule of thirds, like, I don't know if you're kind of in the middle anyway. Like, yeah, no, I like that. I like how they're in the center. I mean, if you did go on the, yeah, I don't know. I think what you've done is fantastic. I love it. It's, yeah, the depth of field is the one thing here that impresses me. A lot of people, sometimes they're just obsessed with using, even though your lens probably doesn't go that low, that particular lens, a lot of people are obsessed with shooting things just really wide open and then hardly anything's in focus. So, you know, if I shot this at f2.8, these little yellow parts here, I don't know what they're called. Is it called starman on flowers? I'm not sure. These might be in focus, but everything else would be blurry and it just doesn't look good. So you've done a great job here at nailing the correct aperture for, or what I think is a correct aperture for this image. Because the background, if that was sharp, that would also be distracting and not look good. So yeah, well done. And beautiful colors, like I've said once again. I don't know how much is it edited, but I know Canon colors are usually really nice and natural out of camera. And like, look at the results you can get from what you'd consider a cheaper camera. It's amazing. If you know what you're doing, you can get great photos out of most cameras. So yeah, great job. All right, so this next image here, the person has asked to remain anonymous, and the explanation of this photo is just watching Osprey. So it's hard for me to do much with this or tell you much because it's just, I don't know if it's I think it's a crop from a much further back image. So they've taken a photo, they might not have been able to get the zoom range or whatever, and they've cropped in. The image is only 674 by 449 pixels, so it's looking quite noisy and grainy on my screen here. But nonetheless, you've caught the bird at an amazing moment. Its beak's open with its tongue out. I love that. You could do some noise reduction. If you have the raw file and you have Lightroom, I suggest you try and do the denoise tool here. I can't do it because you can't do it unless it's the raw file. But we can do some manual noise reduction and see how that looks just a little bit. So we'll keep the detail up. It's going to be very hard to... Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not working with the raw file. It's a very, very low resolution and very small file when it comes to pixel size. So there's not much I could do to this, but nonetheless, it's a great shot at a great moment. I'd love to see the raw file or the original uncropped, because I don't know, like I said, I'm thinking this is an image where the bird's quite far away and you've just cropped in massively to bring the bird closer, which is cool. I do that all the time. But it depends on the megapixels of your camera as well. If you have, the more megapixels you have, the more you can crop in, or the more you can afford to crop in and not lose so much quality. But you can see I've added some noise reduction. It looks a little bit better. But yeah, nonetheless, it's a nice photo. Again, it's a great moment of this bird. Maybe slightly distracting with this stuff down here, but wildlife is wildlife. There's not a lot you can do. But yeah, great shot. And yeah, I'd love to see the original photo of this if you wouldn't mind sharing one day. All right, this next image here is from Jackie, and her explanation is, "This is my first wedding shoot that I took of the bride before her wedding. It was a smaller wedding." So yeah, I really like this photo. The scene looks nice. I think in this image, I want to see a little bit less headspace. So there's a lot of room above her head that there's nothing really interesting going on there. So I would have maybe cropped that and left a bit of headroom, but instead of cropping, what I would have done is just, instead of cropping, I would have just tilted my camera down so that there's less headspace, but then we would have seen more of what she was wearing and what the surrounding environment looked like. That's about it. So it's just composition things with this one. Her pose, I'm not an expert at portrait photography. I've done it a few times. I've done it a lot in the past, but I wouldn't call myself an absolute expert. So I'm not really good at posing people and things like that. But I don't know if her pose could have been a little bit better, or maybe what she's wearing, the jacket, maybe the jacket's hiding her pose or hiding what she's doing with her body a little bit, but it's not, it's hard to explain. It's not really your fault if that's just what she was doing and that's what she wanted a photo of. But if you're going to do weddings and portraits, you have to be good at posing people and instructing people. That's why I'm not good at it, because I just don't know what I'm looking for when it comes to this type of thing very much. Where I've worked with wedding photographers before who just aren't afraid to tell someone, stand this way, do this, do that, and they're just posing people all day long. I just don't have the experience, to be totally honest. But yeah, editing wise, the only thing I would maybe do is just grab the subject, kind of like we did earlier with those other two images, and lift the exposure a little bit. And then, just do the same thing where we duplicate and invert that mask and just lower the exposure of the background just a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. The colors and everything are nice. I think you've got focus. It's hard to tell because it's a low res image, but it looks like her face and everything is in beautiful focus, and the focus does drop off after her, which is fantastic. A lot of people, as I said before, they choose these really wide open apertures and their nose might be in focus and then everything else behind that isn't, or their eyes are in focus and then it drifts off towards their ears, which can look good sometimes. But you've done a really good job of picking the right settings, definitely, and the colors and everything look nice. It just, for me, this one, it just comes down to the pose and the composition. A little less headroom, seeing a little bit more of what she's wearing, or a little bit more of the environment where she is, I think would have looked a little bit better, but nonetheless, it is a great photo. All right, now this photo here is from David, and his explanation is, "Shot up a mountain, fog started to set, was drizzly, so I thought it was time to get the camera." I'm glad that you did, because this is an amazing photo. I absolutely love this. This is something you'd see on the catalog of the company selling this bike. The only thing that's distracting to me, but it's not really something you can control, is the number plate. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of cool as well. It adds to the vibe, but I don't know if I'd try and Photoshop that out. That's just a personal thing. It kind of adds to the photo, but also detracts from the photo at the same time, in my opinion. But other than that, the mood you've captured, I love the reflection of the brake light or the tail light on the road here. And I love seeing the drizzly rain through the headlight beam. It's a beautiful photo, absolutely beautiful. I love the colors, like it's not overly saturated or anything like that. It's beautiful. You've really captured the mood of just like I'm imagining being there. It's cold, it's a little bit windy, it's foggy. You've really captured the mood. amazingly. The only thing I'd say about this image is there's something about it where the bike is a little bit off center, where I'd either prefer to have seen it on the very left third line or the very right third line, or right down the middle, whereas it looks like, yeah, it looks like the bike's weighing a little more to the left of the image. So I would probably crop it just a little bit. It's hardly anything. Crop it somewhere there just to get the bike more in the center of the image. But what you've done, I'll just undo that. What you've done is absolutely amazing. Again, I think it would also would have looked good if the bike was more to the left. But no, nonetheless, this is an amazing image. It's world class. This, yeah, like I said, I could see this in the catalog for the company selling this bike or whatever. It's a really nice photo. Fantastic. Wish I took it. All right, this next image here is from Stephen, and he's explained the photo as one of the biggest things I've struggled with is depth of field and finding the balance between isolating the subject or subjects and having everything that I wanted isolated to be in focus, especially when it came to photographing multiple subjects. Wide open aperture was not my friend in those situations. Most definitely, I've seen a lot of people ask me, they'll take a group photo and they'll send me it and say, why the first row of people in focus and everyone else is blurry? And it's just because they've chosen an aperture that's too wide. Another thing as well is at different focal lengths, aperture does change. So at 50 millimeters, f2.8 might be enough, but at 100 millimeters, it might not be because the depth of field is a bit more compressed at longer focal lengths. So that's another thing to be careful of. Anyway, I decided to use the techniques from the course to take photos of my wife's Christmas villages at different f-stops and manual focus to see how much or how little of the scene I could get in focus. This is one of my favorites from that experiment. I absolutely love this image. It's got really nice, like, Christmassy vibes. I know you said it was Christmas thing, so I know it is, but just the colors and the blur in all the right places, it's a really nice image. Personally, I probably would have liked to seen a little bit more in focus, but what I love the fact that you are experimenting with different f-stops. When I first started photography, that's exactly what I'd do. I'd roll through the different f-stops and take photos at different f-stops, and then I'd look at them in Lightroom and just see, oh, how much was in focus at, f2.8, how much was in focus at f5.6, etc. And now I can pretty much, I'm not saying this to big note myself, I'm just saying this as time goes on and experience goes on, I can walk into almost any scene and pick an f-stop, and 9 out of 10 times what I want to be in focus will be in focus. But yeah, you do have to keep in mind focal length has a big part of that. So if you're shooting something at 50 millimeters at f1.8, for example, it's still going to have a shallow depth of field, but let's say you're shooting at 400 millimeters at f1.8 for some crazy example, there's going to be even less in focus. So it's all about thinking about that stuff. The more I'm zoomed in, the more I close down my aperture, depending on what I want to get in focus. But yeah, I absolutely love this image. It's cool. It gives me a really nice Christmassy vibe. I love it. It makes me feel good. And that's at the end of the day, I think you've done the job. The only thing I would consider, I mean, I can't really do it because I'm cropping into your image, but I would have considered having this man figurine here, like on the third line, somewhere there. Obviously now I'm chopping off all of this area here, so potentially that would have just been a matter of moving the camera, but nonetheless, it's a beautiful photo. And yeah, great to see you experimenting with those f-stops, because that's exactly how you learn. And before you know it, you'll be able to just shoot an image and choose the correct aperture almost straight off the bat. So yeah, nonetheless, I like this image. It's something, I think my son would love this image. I'll have to show him this because he loves Christmassy stuff and, the blurry bokeh lights and all that sort of stuff. It's just a good feeling. So well done. All right, this next image here is from Dana, and her explanation of the image is a beautiful sunset on the Eyre Peninsula where the sky changed so many times and we were mesmerized by it. We sat in this jetty and just took it all in. That's what I love about landscape photography. That is why it is one of my favorite genres. Just to sit there, relax, just take in the landscape while you're getting to take photos is absolutely amazing. Honestly, I love this photo. I don't think there's much I would do to it. I think the horizon is slightly off. Let's just see. Maybe a little bit. Maybe somewhere there's closer. Maybe it's not perfect. But anyway, I love this image. There's not really much more I'd do to this one. You've captured a really great moment. The clouds look beautiful. I love the drama in the clouds. I love the colors. I don't know if I'd warm it up a little bit. Let's see. I don't know. I think it's good. Let's see what Lightroom wants to do if we go to auto. Yep, spot on. Hasn't moved. Yeah, no, not much I'd do to this one. I really like this one. You've captured the vibe perfectly. I can imagine myself there, and that's the key. So yeah, well done with this one. Alright, this next image here, the person has asked to remain anonymous, which is cool. And they're going to explain the photo as my first portrait photo at a photography street walk last weekend in Sydney. 1/1000th of a second, f2.8, ISO 100. Realized when I got home I had shot all my photos in JPEG. New camera and didn't check it. Feel free to share that info. Yeah, that's alright. JPEGs these days, honestly, there's a lot of data to work with them. RAW is obviously better, but anyway. This is a really nice photo. I love the pose. The model's done a really good job here. I don't know if they were, I think you said it. I was a street walk, so I'm imagining she was posing for you. So yeah, the model's done a really good job. You've done a great job. I love the black and white. The settings are fantastic that you've chosen as well. The only thing I'd say is I would like to have seen a little bit more room under her foot. It's cropped basically right on the edge of her foot there. I do like to have a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing room. That's again just a personal thing. I think a lot of portrait photographers would agree with that as well. Having a bit of breathing room around limbs is a good idea, and maybe there's too much headspace, so maybe instead of cropping or taking the photo, I don't know if this is cropped or this is how you took the photo, but if this is cropped, maybe just leave a little bit of space under the foot, and you could bring the headroom down a little bit as well, because there is a lot of headroom in this as well. I don't know if the point of the photo was to get this Morena, whatever that says, sign in. If so, fantastic. If not, I'd probably crop that a little bit lower and show a little bit more of what's under a foot. Not too much, just like a little bit. It just helps the image flow rather than just starting straight off with a foot. And it's a little bit jaunting to see a foot straight right there without any kind of breathing room. But yeah, editing is really nice. Yeah, like I said, the model's posing really nicely, and I love the black and white. It's a fantastic photo. Well done. So yeah, that brings us to the end. That's 15 images. I think I'm going to have more coming in, so I'll probably do another series of this soon. Hope you enjoyed. If you are interested in any of my courses, the link will be in the description below. It's basically just the ultimatephotographycourse.com, and I have two courses. One of them is more of a generic, learn everything about photography. The other's just on landscape photography. So hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much to all the people who submitted their photos. I really appreciate it. I hope I wasn't too harsh. It's not supposed to come across that way. Everything here is meant to just be constructive criticism, and again, it is all my opinion, so if you don't agree, that's totally fine. You don't have to. It's just what I would do if they were my images. So yeah, hope you enjoy this one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much for watching.